If you've ever considered implants to replace your teeth, then there's really two different types of prosthetics that you need to consider when making this decision. The first one is made out of acrylic that's not as strong but snaps in and out. And then we have the zirconia, which is very strong and is screwed into place. There's big price differences between the two, and I'm going to go into detail during this video. On this particular example, we have 4 dental implants on this model representing the lower jaw. And on top of these implants are what are called abutments. And depending on which prosthetic we go with, we're either going to use the snap-on abutment or we're going to use one like this, which is called a multi-unit abutment. I really like using these BioHorizon dental implants because the parts are easily changeable. So if you decide to go with one that snaps into place like this, you can then convert it to one that's screwed into place later on if needed without having to change the dental implants. Now the pros of using a prosthetic like this that snaps into place is that it's much easier to clean than one that is screwed into place. And these little retention caps pop onto these snap-on abutments and really only need to be replaced about once every 1 to 2 years before the snap portion of it kind of wears out. And to replace these, it's about $50 per snap. So whether you have 2 implants or 4 implants that are supporting this denture, it should usually cost about $100 to $200 to get a fresh pair of snaps. Now the downside to a prosthetic like this is it has a flange that can dig down into the lips or gums, and people don't really like that. I get a lot of patients coming back for adjustments in that area. But let's move on to showing you how to convert something like the snap-on one to the screwed into place one, which is the favorite option. You know, if it were me, I would go for the screwed in option, but later in this video, I'm going to be getting into the pricing because there is quite a big difference between the two options. Now, in order to convert the snap-on version over to the screwed-on version, we use what looks like a familiar device to all of us. This is a hex key or an Allen wrench. In this case, I'm going to be using my electric handpiece to remove this, but these parts just unscrew from the implants. These implants themselves have an internal thread. Think of it like a helicoil or a screw within the screw. We can unscrew things and screw them into the implants because once they're in your jaw, it's very difficult to remove them as they have now fused to your bone. So we can remove these abutments and switch them out for parts that will allow us to screw in the teeth and leave them in as opposed to snapping the teeth in and having the ability to remove them. So as mentioned earlier, it's just a matter of changing these parts out. Here you can see me hand tightening these new screwed in abutments, and then I'm going to torque them to spec using a torque wrench. Torque wrenches are used commonly in the automotive or mechanical industries to tighten nuts and bolts to a certain tightness. In this case, we're using Newton centimeters. These particular abutments from BioHorizons call for about 30 Newton centimeters, which converts to 0.22 foot-pounds. So with the use of these adapters, I'm able to ratchet these abutments on, torque them to their particular spec, and then we can start designing teeth. And that process is so cool. With using modern techniques, we can use 3D scanners to accurately position the implants in a CAD program, design the teeth on your face so that they're custom for you. And then we print out a temporary to try it in, make sure it fits. And then these zirconia pieces are actually milled out of a puck and then fired in an oven so that they are extremely strong. As you can see in this clip, I actually hit them with a hammer on top of a granite countertop and they didn't even break. I've even run them over with a pickup truck and they didn't break. So shout out to Chameleon Dental Lab, which is the company I work to help produce these teeth. We've had an incredible success on making teeth that last a really long time for patients. I think we've only seen one break, and that's because a patient was chewing on a frozen peanut M&M. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. So the prosthetic is designed to have small holes for these little tiny screws to hold it in place. Now, I get a lot of questions from patients asking, does this ever need to come out? And there's a lot of biased answers on this. And I'm just going to tell you what my opinion is. And being an experienced mechanic, working on houses, working on cars, I know that every time I screw something into like a wall or a piece of metal and unscrew it, you get what's called metal fatigue, where the flutes on the screw can actually wear off and the screw can strip. And so the more you unscrew something and screw it into place, the more it wears out. And so if you take this prosthetic on and off consistently And modern science calls for once a year. Some people say never. Some people say every 5 years. These parts are going to have to be replaced. And so my thought process is, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Okay. So, almost all of my patients that I do these cases with, I'm seeing twice a year or even more than that to make sure that these implants are healthy. We take x-rays, we look at the gum tissue, we clean it underneath it with some special cleaning tools, but we leave it on unless we see a problem with the gums or the teeth or the bone. At that point, yes, we would unscrew it, take a look a little bit deeper, maybe clean the implant, maybe clean the prosthetic, maybe even redesign something if that's what needs to be done. But once it's torqued into place, let's leave it there. And I think patients really like that as well, because going through the process of taking it off, when it has something attached to their body, they just don't like it. But you end up with these little screw holes, which are filled in with composite or a filling material. So amazing process, guys. I absolutely love dentistry. If you ever have a question about you or a family member or a friend that's just going through it, whether they're getting the runaround from a dentist or they're just lost and don't know which decision to go with, please reach out to me. I'm very lucky to do something that I absolutely love. And so if you have questions, just shoot me an email. I'll put my email in the description below. I'll put my Facebook, my Instagram, TikTok. There's many ways you can reach out to me, and I'll love to help you through this process. If you have any questions, make sure you drop a comment below, and thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.